Rising Moons travelers. I wanted to quickly go over, and this is going to be the start of another playlist from me about how to disassemble and then reassemble a Savi's Hilt in order to help you guys in being able to troubleshoot some of the problems that you have. And then along the way, I'll be talking about some of the issues that I've encountered, and then possible solutions for them. And I'll also kind of go over some of the tools that I use to be able to troubleshoot things a little bit, and give you guys some insight there, hopefully. And just kind of go really slow here so you guys can kind of watch along and pause where you are. I completely understand some people are not like super technical when it comes to like soldering and stuff like that, and it can be a little bit intimidating, to be honest with you. When I was brand new kind of getting into this thing, I was like, I don't want to tear apart a saber I just paid a whole bunch of money for, but it's not working, or and I wanted to kind of be able to convey a little bit of confidence to you guys that a lot of the issues and things like that you can troubleshoot. There are solutions for them. I would highly recommend joining the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge Discord server. I'll leave a link to the Discord server in the description of this video as well, so you can kind of there's several groups on there. There's a lightsaber group, there's a tech group, there's makerspace, there's a whole bunch of different groups there, and lots of really good people who are more than willing to share some of the knowledge that they have. A lot of what I know is because of those folks, so I would highly encourage you to to reach out for help if you need it. So to kind of get things going here, I'm going to go over some of the tools that I use. The first and foremost thing that you're going to need is a 2mm Allen. This happens to be one left over from my RC car racing days, but still is very viable. It's actually really convenient too. But any Allen key will work for these. So that's one of the first thing you're going to need to start disassembly. But then once we get going to starting to remove some of the components and things like that inside, one thing that I would highly recommend getting is a good pair of tweezers with a fine tip on the end of it. Not that you're going to need to really grab anything with them, but you'll see you kind of need to use them as a pry tool in order to kind of be able to unplug there's cables in here called ZIF cables, zero insertion force, that kind of like lock in, and it's important that they're orientated correctly, but then also that you're not doing anything where you would potentially damage the actual connector that connects the cable to the circuit board itself. So in order to be able to do that, I use this as kind of a prying tool, and you'll see why here. The other thing that you're going to need is a number 1 Phillips screwdriver. This just happens to be a socketed quarter inch one, but it doesn't need no special characteristics or anything like that here. Any Phillips 1 or even a Phillips 2 will work on the handful of Phillips screws that there are inside the device. So that's pretty much it really for the tools. Obviously, when it comes down time to repairing the actual issue, sometimes it's going to be some soldering, so you'll need a pretty decent soldering iron at that point. But we'll when we get to that area, I'll break those things out for you guys so you guys can see those as well. So without further ado, let's start taking it apart. So you'll notice there are going to be 4 screws on each on the top part of the hilt and the bottom part of the hilt, and let's see here, there's several layers to the hilt that you'll see here in a moment. Oh, and by the way, before I forget and actually remove the thing here, remember, see there's no battery in it right now, right? Don't do any of this with the battery in it. It creates a little bit of spring tension when you have the battery in there, because there's pogo pin adapters down inside of here. You don't want to have anything fighting against you there, so be sure to remove your battery pack before you do anything with these guys. Okay, so now we have the outer sleeve comes right off. Okay, and then this part down here is essentially the processing and the quote unquote, brains of the saber is all right in this area here. There's a couple of different circuit boards here. You'll notice there's a ribbon cable. Okay, so we're getting to the area where we're dealing with some things that are a little bit fragile, right? So to be able to remove that, okay, you're going to very gently, again, using your tweezers, you're going to get underneath this ribbon cable and you're going to gently pull it out. It'll be tucked into this part here. Okay, so you're going to just gently pull it out of that portion where it's tucked in. And you'll see here. Okay, and then now it's out. Right? Again, this is probably the most fragile piece in the entire hilt. There's an angle and a corner that it turns up here, which is, in my opinion, a design flaw. But it is what it is. But just remember that is tucked down into there, so you can remove it simply by grabbing it and pulling it back out. Okay. So then we're gonna pull this out here. Oh, you also don't want to have a kyber crystal in it either, because it's gonna have spring tension as well, right? Okay, so now we'll see here we've got the ribbon cable connected and a power cable. So the power cable, we can just kind of gently pull out directly out. You'll see there where it's plugged in. Let me zoom in for you here. Right, you see there where it's plugged into the board. So we're just going to pull directly out, and it comes out relatively easily. Okay. So now we need to deal with this ZIF cable, right? And to do that, so on the plug itself, let me very carefully rotate this over here. You'll notice that there's a black clip that goes in front. That slides in and out, and that is what grabs onto the cable and forces and makes the connection electrically between the cable and this motherboard, right? So to get those out, what you want to do is that's when you use your tweezers here. Okay, I just put them underneath. Let me make sure you guys can actually see this. Just a minute, let me get a little bit more light. Okay, I'm just putting it underneath. I'm not pinching down. I'm just holding it so it's underneath the two little ledges. Let me zoom in one more time here. Let me see if I can actually, yeah. So you see the little ledge right there and right there, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold it there, not pinching down, but I'm gonna push out. See, one end came out, the other end came out. That's as far as it needs to go, okay? It doesn't need to go any further than that. Push it further than that, and you just broke that plug. And they are very difficult to attach again. Okay, and then essentially now the cable comes right out. See, zero insertion force. There's no insertion force when you're putting it in. It just locks in with that locking mechanism. Okay, let me zoom back out here. Okay, so essentially now we have the base, the battery part, and the processor, and the RFID reader, and some of the other quote-unquote smarts of the saber is in the lower half here. Okay, so I'll be honest with you, very little of the troubleshooting that you need to do is in the base. The one troubleshooting step that sometimes you might need to do is there is what's called a Hall effect sensor right around here. That is a magnetic sensor, and it detects the magnetic switch. So the switch usually rides in this divot right here, and essentially when the magnet is over it, it's off, and when it's not over it, it's on, right? And there's a little sensor in here that detects that magnetic field, and it will turn the saber on and off, right? So sometimes that can be out of alignment, but that's usually, you know, if the switch plate is really loose or not aligned correctly or something like that, that's where you'll run into those types of things. So not a whole lot of troubleshooting that normally needs to happen in here unless you've got problems with your battery terminals there, right? So those are the 4 terminals that are in there. There's going to be a speaker. I think so yeah, you'll see there the far left and the far right are your speaker positive and negative, and then the 2 in the center there that are on top of each other are your positive and negative battery leads. And those line up with oh well, this is not a very good example. This is an upgraded one, but those line up with the terminals on the back of the battery, and then they go in, lock, and you're in, right? So there, on occasion, if you're having a problem where, you know, you'll plug in the battery and it'll die right away, or it'll make a disconnect sound or something like that, you can check these pogo pins, they're called. They are spring loaded, and what you can do is just kind of push on them one at a time, gently, right? Just you'll feel them move, and if you don't feel them move, it can be a problem. It can mean that one of them is stuck. It can either be stuck down and it's just not making contact, or it just won't go in. And so, you know, there could be some corrosion or something like that in there that can cause some issues. So that's pretty much it for the bottom half as far as the removal part goes. So I'll be right back in a second, and we'll actually take this apart and show you guys the internals here.